Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm swell, Bob. How is your December going?
It's cold, and I would like to welcome everybody to the Pop Culture Squadcast Live. We are live. It's Tuesday night, and we have a great guest tonight. He's already here, so we're going to get to him as soon as we can. Um, it's cold. It's cold. It's cold here in Baltimore. It was colder in Columbus, where I was this weekend. Um,
Oh yeah, it's
Very,
always
very,
colder in
very,
Columbus.
very cold. Um, but we had a great show. Sherry and I raised some money for Hero Initiative. Happy to have been there and to do that and see a bunch of friends as well. Um, it was it's one of the best things about the things that we do is raising money for folks who need it. And that was a good way to end the year on a comic book. Speaking of ending the year, for folks who are aware or not, next week is our big year-end Gab Fest. I've just set up the session for it, so we're going to be here next Tuesday. It's going to be our last show of the year, and we're going to have a couple of comic readers and opinioners to join us. Mars, that comic girl, and Zach Quaintance, friend of the show, are going to join us, and we're gonna count down top 5 comics and or things of the year. We might have an extra guest. It's going to be a good show, so make sure you're here next Tuesday as we go live and join in the conversation.
And read more comics because
Well,
otherwise we'll just be babbling about stuff you don't know anything about. So just read them, you know.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to jump into a couple of things before we get to our guest. We'll start first with the huge news. And the huge news is, well, we're going to put it in film and TV news. We'll put it in that category. The issue is that Warner Brothers Discovery has decided on a new daddy.
Only half of that.
Yes, a new daddy for half of them. The other half is going to go and be its own daddy or something. But the Warner Brothers part of Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be acquired by Netflix. Um, there, and
Or
I
or not.
well, so the announcement was that Netflix's bid has been accepted. David Ellison is pretty pissed about it, and he's not happy that they didn't take his money. Um, and so he has found a whole bunch of other people, including Jared Kushner, to go and try and steal the company and buy out the shares and force a new board to get them to sell the company to him. So
It's
that is what
it's
we call
called
a
it's
hostile.
called a hostile takeover.
Yes, yes.
It's not regarded as an act of theft. However, one can easily see it that way.
I can. It is technically, you're right, called a hostile takeover. Feels a little bit like I don't like it, so I'm gonna go around your back and take it from you
Mhm.
anyway. I will say it's quite a bit of a thing going on, but I bring it up because obviously it's big news. It's important to us. It's important to what the like one of the things that I'm sure is like I'm sure that when they're like, oh, let's buy Warner Brothers, they're like, well, let's make sure we get DC Comics with it. They want Superman, but the DC Comics publishing portion of it is a very small piece that they hardly ever care about. But cares matters a lot to us.
They may not have noticed it.
That's true. Um, but well, they have talked about it in certain ways. And so highly recommend, I'm going to put it in the comments. I highly recommend going to the beat as we normally do. We, scour all the, trade rags, the best being the beat as far as I'm concerned. And Heidi is really on her game today. I'm gonna give you some quotes from this article. Did you read Heidi's article?
No, I read the one on Pop Culture Squad though.
Well, there's that one. That one's a good one. You have a good one there, but with today's changes, we have this.
Mm.
Um, so he mentions what Ted Sarandos, who is the owner or the CEO of Netflix, he stepped in with big man energy. I'm just quoting big man energy to calm the waters, and saying that they saw this coming. Today's move was entirely expected, Sarandos said. We have a
Yep.
deal done, and we are really happy with the deal for shareholders, for consumers. It's a great way to create and protect jobs in the entertainment industry, and we are super confident that we are going to get it across. Now, he then went on to talk about how they're really committed to theaters and not changing the way that Warner Brothers does things. And this is another quote, if he really means this, he'll be the only visionary CEO who doesn't, in fact, destroy the value of WB, because previous owners, AT&T and Discovery, did a pretty good job of that. And then David Zaslav has been lavishing Peter Safran and James Gunn with a level of praise he previously reserved for house flippers. I like this. She's on a roll today. And then
I guess I was unaware of the slipper connection.
The house flippers, because David Zaslav used to be just Discovery.
I understand.
Yes. And then we have the David Sarandos has yet to prove his comic book bona fides by naming his favorite run of the Legion, but he did allude to the value of the DCIP property in a call on Friday. So I highly recommend going and reading it. It's quite the fun article. It will give you the rundown of all of the news. But you, as you mentioned, wrote about it yesterday in your column, Brainiac on Banjo on Pop Culture Squad. What's your take on this? I mean, we knew this was coming. We knew that it was going to happen. The Netflix part of it was, I don't know, a little surprising to me. I thought it was in the bag for Skydance, but
well, we always think that, because we know that after all is said and done, the Ellisons are going to go running over to Emperor Orange and start whining. And Emperor Orange is making these comments like, well, I don't like any of them, which is bullshit. He likes anybody who gives him that many millions and millions of dollars. So after my column was published yesterday, I got some comments from some friends and some of our friends. And I said, I think that it's just an extortion attempt. I think that Trump is just trying to get some money and some concessions, maybe John Oliver's job. I don't know. But I mean, that's what worked with Disney sort of for a while, for a week. So we'll see. Netflix is, in my opinion, the best choice or the best place for Warner Bros. To wind up. I would rather see more competitors, not more mergers. But that's not the world we live in today. And Warner Brothers has been kicked around so much, traded back and forth. It had several different owners when I was there. It's had more different owners since I left, and that's not. I'm not part of that. I didn't cause them to leave. I would like to see Warner Brothers get back to doing what they do, which is not running CNN, which they won't be doing because that's not part of this deal,
mm-hmm.
and not running things that they don't know anything about. They know creative, they know storytelling, and they're good at it. They got people who are really good at it, and I think Netflix is since Netflix needs that material, whereas Ellison just wants CNN to make Trump feel good. I'm hoping that Netflix makes it 80%. The other 20%, it's like, oh, geez, well, crossing my fingers. Yeah, that'd be true for anybody.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fair. It is something we're going to be covering. We will follow it here as we head into year 4. We are ending the 3rd year of our SquadCast Live. Year 4 starts next year. We'll be following however that works out. Hopefully for the best. That's all we can do.
There's so many other things that have to work out, and this is sort of part of that. Sure. So it's next year, 2026.
Yeah,
may wind up being one of the most difficult years of our lives. I strongly believe it'll be one of the most headachy years of our lives.
You're not filling me with holiday joy.
No. Ah, shit. I'm sorry. I didn't look at this week's script.
All right. Comic news roundup of the day. This was a big news today. There is going to be the next in the Marvel DC crossover in their attempt to save the industry, Spider-Man and Superman again.
What a concept.
I mean, it's good stuff. I mean, so this has got announced. Mark Waid and Jorge Jimenez are doing the main story, and this book will be in stores Wednesday, March 25th. I'm gonna run down the
Jim
side
Lee
story.
Jim Lee did a beautiful variant cover for this.
There's a bunch of really great variant covers.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a Lois Lane and Mary Jane Watson story by Tom King and Jim Lee. There is a Jimmy Olsen and Carnage story by Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber. I just said Jimmy Olsen and Carnage.
I would assume Carnage will turn orange. Maybe wear a bow tie. But Jimmy should be used to turning into all kinds of different stuff.
Sure. There will be go ahead. No.
Well, you know that they're doing a Jimmy Olsen TV series for Netflix or whoever winds up owning it.
I want him to be Elastikid.
And yeah, but then I think that they don't want to take Fantastic Four on. But I'll bet you that they start making turtle references with the first episode.
Yeah, probably. Superboy and Spider-Man 99 by Sean Murphy is going to be in this. This one is going to be interesting. Power Girl and the Punisher by Gail Simone and Belen Ortega.
It is interesting.
Superboy Prime, who I hate, and Symbiote Spider-Man, who I also hate, by Christopher Priest and Daniel Sampier, who I like.
Yeah, that's actually that kind of saves it. I'm not crazy about those two characters either. I'm not crazy about any Superman or Spider-Man or Hulk or Green Lantern or what have you. That is just the 400th in the chain.
Yes,
but Christopher Priest is a very interesting writer.
So I saw Christopher a lot this weekend. He was and
how's he doing?
He's doing fine. He's doing he had a very good time, I think. He's a man focused on story, and yes, we've had a good time. He knows me by name at this point, which I am pretty happy with. So that and Daniel Sampier, fantastic. The last two stories are both very ancillary. One is Daily Planet and the Daily Bugle by one of my favorite creative teams in Greg Rucka and Nicola Scott. And then the last is the Pa Kent and Uncle Ben story by Jeff Lemire and Rafa Sandoval, which that should be interesting. Anyway, this book comes out.
This far, I haven't been terribly impressed with the crossings.
No, I haven't read any of them. I haven't
hated them. They're and a couple are pretty good, but they're good stories. I guess that's all I have any right to expect.
Sure.
Crossovers are no big deal. Haven't been since pretty much the time we had this earthquake and all the mountains were made, and then they started doing crossovers.
Sure.
So it's not a big deal. But I am expecting a little bit more of a big deal than what I've seen so far. But entertain me, guys. Come on.
we have news that I'm going to talk about, in that Free Comic Book Day is going to be here on May 2nd, 2026. It is going to be in a form that is different because, as we have mentioned for this past year, one of the big themes of 2025 is diamond issues. And because there are diamond issues, and there have been diamond issues, Free Comic Book Day no longer belongs to Diamond. It was sold to Universal. So Universal is going to do it with people that it either publishes or has made deals with. It has not made any deals with anybody who exclusively publishes through Penguin Random House. So Marvel and the lot are not going to be part of Free Comic Book Day. They're going to have Comics Giveaway Day or something of the like, also on the same day. So we will have Free Comic Book Day, but not Free Comic Book Day as we know it before. In any event, it is a day to celebrate comics and read more comics, as we said.
Shouldn't they be changing the name of one of those two to Captain Marvel?
I think so.
Those of you who are up on business law as it applies to comic books will think that was absolutely hilarious.
It was definitely good. Ed likes your turtle reference.
Good.
Listen. All right. So that was all the things I had, but you hit me up and said you want to talk about one more thing. So I want to give you the opportunity. Let me get it up here. I think it's this.
Oh, you're finding the art.
I am getting the art. 1 second here.
That's good. Well, let me babble a little bit about background, and then I won't
Go ahead.
mention it until you
Go
have the
ahead.
art.
Go ahead.
A lot of comic books to be read this past week. Just a lot came out that I normally read or that caught my fancy. And for some reason, I mean, I like this character a lot, but I haven't been following him as much. Maybe he hasn't been around that much. So I was a little surprised at the first issue. Do you have it up there?
I do.
Go for it.
This is it, right? Wiccan the Rich.
Wiccan. Yep, right with
Witch's
these.
Road.
This is a sort of ersatz Ditko hand gesture. Good character. Always enjoyed it. You know, I even enjoyed him the way they did him on TV, although not as much as my daughter did. It's a good story. So, but this is, I don't know, is this an ongoing or is this like a mini?
It's at least a mini. It's definitely a multi-story, multi-issue
Right.
story. I don't know that it's ongoing. Nothing's really an ongoing at Marvel. It's only 4 issues, and then they have to start at 1 again.
Yeah. We can't count past 4 in this business anymore. In any event, we have had comic books for like 90 years, and we have had romance stories for 1,000 years. But I cannot remember ever reading a romance story anywhere near as good as what I read in Wiccan #1. It was, I mean, I didn't care so much about the superhero elements, which are easy to dismiss because superhero elements are all, they're not all the same, but you know the beats, you know where it's going. The relationship stuff, not so much. And the marriage that he's in and the situation that they're in, and I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't read it, brings out the depth of their feelings for one in a way I do not recall having read in comics before. A truly deep and moving romantic story told as a superhero story, and it is a superhero story. If you're just buying it for superhero action, you will not be disappointed. It's a very, very good story. One of the best comics I've read in months.
So let's mention the fact that Wyatt Kennedy is the writer of that story. The cover is with Lucas Wernack. Can't quite get the interior artist. But yeah, I have not read it yet. But I am now going to. I love Wiccan. I am a fan of where he comes from.
Yeah.
I am a fan of the Young Avengers from the beginning. I will follow them around. I've always loved his relationship. I've always found it to be a true affection based story whenever they do it, and usually they do it right. They've treated them fairly for the most part. I hope they continue to. But yeah, no, I'm very glad you liked it, and I look forward to getting a chance to read it myself. I have not picked it up yet. I think I didn't make it to the comic shop last week.
It's one of those comics where, you sort of put it not at the top of your pile, because there's comics you really want to read for whatever reason. You remember the storyline, or you're excited by it, or what have you. So this one, was one of the last of the week's books that I read. And I read it at like 3 a.m, and I had this feeling of regret that I hadn't read it earlier,
I love that.
which is really stupid, but yet it's real. It's absolutely real. So I'm plugging this book because it moved me. It truly moved me, and
I love
that. We don't get enough of that, but I'm a tough nut to crack anyway. So my kudos to everybody involved.
Good stuff. All right. Before we forget, I'm going to tell you one more time. Next week is our last show of the year. We are going to be here, and we're going to be talking about the things that we love this year. We're going to do a top 5 of the comics that we've read, and we're going to talk about recapping some of the big stories. We're going to have a couple of guests. Mars, that comic girl, and Zach Quaintance are going to join us, and it should be fun. So please be here and join in our conversation. But before we get to next week, we got to do this week. And this week we have a great guest. We have the second half of the creative team of the Author Immortal. We had the first half on earlier this year. Morgan Beam is the artist, and the writer, Frank Barbiere, is going to join us now. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. So let's welcome in Frank. Hello, sir. How are you?
Doing well. Looking at a lot of those old comic covers made me feel old. Comics I wrote 13 years ago. I was like, oh, turns
you are old, Frank. You're just you have to deal with it.
I know, guy. I'm trying. I'm doing my best.
I love doing those. I love making, kind of remembering all the things that people have done when we have a list like that, and just so much fun looking back at those old things and seeing the people that you worked with and how so many of them have gone on to do so many things as you have. Just to back in the day, you and Chris Mooneyham on Five Ghosts and the things that you guys have gone on to do has just been fantastic.
Thank you. It's one of my great pleasures in the creative industry that mainly everyone I kind of broke in with, or was just kind of going to cons trying to break in with, ended up in comics and have cool careers with a lot of cool work. Many have eclipsed me now as I leave. But
it's not a competition.
No. Sincerely, again, it's what I love about the medium, that I feel like the people who tend to stick around really want to put out cool work and do tend to get there. I mean, the world's not a perfect meritocracy, but it's what always drew me to comics versus stuff like film and TV, which are a lot more like, hey, move to LA, network for 5 years, and then maybe someone will let you be PA on something and kind of get there, versus like comics, like, hey, make some comics and maybe you can get them into the right hands, and at least you can go to a Comic-Con and at least like throw stuff directly at an editor instead of mailing it to them. But
we don't have that sword of money hanging over our heads. Now, the bad news part of it is that means that very few of us are ever going to get any of that money. But without that, we're employable. We're less expensive to do than a movie in any way, shape, or form, or a TV show. And I can't tell the difference between the two anymore, which is fine. and we're convivial.
yeah, right. Well,
And that brings out some great work, because people, and you go to a convention and you listen to people just bullshit one another, talk about stories and talk about stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of humor and sarcasm and some pretty damn good insults, but behind all that is a love for the medium, and that is that sort of money that hangs over our heads.
It's so funny because there's a few times in my career people said like, oh, how did you get like so and so to work with you? I'm just like, I emailed them. Like, people are gettable. Like, again, they didn't know who I was, but like, yeah, I'd be like, hey, we have money. But alas,
I want to get to more of your journey, but before we do that, I really want to talk about this. Let's talk about the author.
And again, yeah, so glad you guys had Morgan on. She is absolutely delightful and a generational talent.
She is delightful and a generational talent. I have been wanting to talk to her for quite some time, and finally pinned her down. And I said, I would like for you to be on the show. If you want to bring your husband, that's up to you, but I want you. He can come along. And so he did, and we talked. It was great because we got to talk about them. And
also a delight. I have to say, I've hung out with both of them now. So
he is a delight. Yeah. Well, when I came down to see you at Third Eye when you were signing, they were both there as well. And like I said, they're great people. She's amazing. She is. I've seen her stuff before. She absolutely blew me away on the book she did with IDW, and I just lost it.
Crashing.
Oh my god!
It happens to me all the time. I'm sure I will do it on
right. True. But Crashing was the absolute best book that nobody has talked about. It is, and I will talk about it all the time. It was such a fantastic story, and she was crazy, awesome on it. But you got her to do this almost soon after that. I would think she started working on this.
It's funny.
There was like a book in the middle, but
we were talking before Morgan started Crashing, because he's like, well, I got an IDW thing to do, and I was, that's all good. We first started talking in, I'm literally looking it up right now because I'm going to say it, but like a long time ago, because I had kind of stopped doing comics, and not completely, but I wasn't really doing like a big creator-owned book. Like, I was co-writing a lot of stuff with my friends and people who had wanted to kind of do comics, and I was kind of just started working in games. July 19th, 2021 is when I emailed Morgan.
Wow.
Yeah. Excuse me, July 9th, 2021.
Okay. That's good.
Or is when she emailed me back. And it was Morgan's studio mate, Rye Hickman, who put us in touch, who I had been trying to collaborate on a project. Again, another phenomenal talent. But yeah.
Absolutely.
So again, I've seen Morgan kind of take on other work as we've gone, which has been awesome, because we took it slow with this. And I was like, hey, I want you to do this book. This book, I'm writing it for you. It's not like I'm going to give it to someone else. So I'm very glad that Morgan managed to finally get some time and we could jump in, because it was one of those things where we quickly like resonated, and I I could tell she was really into the content. It was going to be very additive. And again, with a creator-owned book, you don't want to work with someone who's not excited about it. And there's still always that writer fear in me when I like basically the first pitches to my collaborators, and there's always the fear of like, I think I sound like an idiot when I describe this to them. But alas, we got on, and again, because she did Crashing, she was wrapping up You Belong Here, which is a beautiful biographic novel that was a real beefy project. I remember she was showing me just like the stack of pages.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's crazy.
It's beautiful. Yeah, written by Sarah Miller, and I think First Second did it. Then she did that Twilight Zone issue in between like issues of Author Immortal. That was Morgan is sneaky fast as well as being talented.
For
someone who does full
watercolor painter. Exactly. So let's talk about this book. How do you talk about what the book is?
So this was
because Mike asked when we were talking about it on the show earlier.
I think you did a beautiful summary. Actually, I remember seeing that. Yeah. So thank you for that. Because for me, it's been tricky because like I pitch it, I think, a little more in like a general sense where people don't really get the whole enchilada till they read it. As issue 1 is like a big chunky 40 pages that has a lot of ground to cover, but I typically say it's about a failed writer who gets a chance to reboot his favorite childhood series and ends up getting drawn into the world of the story along with his kid, and kind of drama ensues, which is a very small fraction of the book in kind of where the solicit leans. And it sucks because you get so little room to solicit, but also like there's a lot obviously about
without having to tell them.
Well, then there's a lot about like death of the author. There's a lot about identity culture and just like kind of pseudo like, I don't want to say like
there's everything in it.
I mean, it's very anti J.K. Rowling, which scares some people, and we didn't want the book to be like a culture war piece, like, and especially up front when we were soliciting it, like talk about that up front. But like really it is for me an artifact about mistrust in writers and mistrust in creative arts, and you guys were just talking about like the Netflix acquisition and stuff, and I feel like story and just all its forms in every medium has become product to people that seems disingenuous. And then on top of that, we have so many writers who have creators of all kinds, but writers come to front of mind who have outed themselves as just fucking awful people, or people who have used their power for evil and things that are just obviously bad. And I think it's really eroded a lot of trust in story. And the other thing I always point to, which is silly, is I remember reading this article on CBR, not putting CBR on blast because everyone runs stuff like this, but it was like Peter Jackson admits The Hobbit's not that good, or like he didn't try his best or some shit, and just stuff like that. I'm just like, man, really? Do you need that from him? Do you need to hear creators say like, oh, sorry, like this wasn't maybe again? So that feeling really,
particularly when they can change their mind 3 years later.
Yeah, or just having a bad day.
I was looking at that. It really wasn't so bad,
But that was at least my headspace coming into it. And really, like, I am a huge fan of the series The Unwritten by Mike Carey and Peter Gross. And this book is
there's so much of that. Yes, totally.
This book is very much a love letter to that, because ever since I read that book, I wanted to do a story like that, a metafiction book. And I always had this idea of like, oh, like what if there was this pre-Tolkien fantasy writer who basically was writing to keep his daughter alive, and she was basically taken into the story of the book, and where does that go? And I always was like, well, that's like a fun, like plotty genre piece, but what is the other half that makes it my book, not just my shitty version of The Unwritten? And finally, when I really came to like, oh, this is about choosing the stories you want to tell about yourself, about relationships between families, about identity, and kind of declaring your own identity, whether it be who you want to be, your gender, etc. And then also death of the author kind of coming in and really squaring a lot of the circles of like, oh, like this is how I'm feeling about the Rowling stuff in particular, or just the general vibe of how we're trying to separate work from writer. And that stuff I feel like all became really me and Morgan as well. We started collaborating, and has been the joy to discover, because like a lot of people do portal fantasy or isekai or metafiction, but really I think the joy, and it kills me because like this stuff really starts hitting at the end of our first arc, like where you see like really what our book is about, like, and we
I love
try
that
to
you just said first arc. I'm just saying.
well,
I
I
caught
have
that too. Yeah.
well, I have famous. I mean, this is an ongoing, and famously, I said I conceived it as like a 60 issue series, as it's. I wasn't doing a lot of monthly comics, and I was like, listen, if I do a book again and I come back to Image, like I want to shoot for the moon. I want to do something that is very much in line with the stuff that made me really love comics. These long form, basic early 2000s Vertigo stuff was really just where I was getting in there. Just Brian K. Vaughan's work there, Scalped, The Unwritten, like even like Sweet Tooth I had forgotten. Just like they were on a tear, and that is the stuff that made me really, really love comics. And that was the kind of series I wanted to put together and start working on. And that is what this is. And it is a very different market than it was in the early 2000s, but it is at least our the fire that we have, and what kind of guides us. So
well, we are booking you right now for the beginning of every arc. You will come on and we will talk about this. That's already done. The character, how did the character development work? Was it a collaboration between Morgan and you, in terms of how we were going to see this father and their child?
I mean, really, it is we talk about it a lot. So like again, but I kind of wrote issue 1 in this like stream of consciousness, like, oh wait, I get what this is, and it, like wrote it in like 2 hours and sent it to Morgan. It was like, oh, this is that, and she was like, oh shit, and from there just kind of kept going. We also have an editor on the book named Arden Ripley, who is hugely collaborative, straight up a story editor who goes over the scripts with me and talks about actually what's here and our characterization and everything, which has been tremendously useful for me, because I'm used to just kind of doing everything myself. And people always ask like, oh, what did you learn in video games, like in your time there? And I was like, have someone proofread
my questions.
What's that?
I said, don't take my questions. We're going to get to that.
We'll get there. But Arden came on through a friend of a friend, and is a dear collaborator on this, and also really helped just with our characterization and who's
well,
there.
I mean, you have some serious characterization that you need to maintain. It can be, it can, based on, the being sucked into narrative, can be easy to lose where a character's line belongs, and having somebody, with you to kind of like keep that line on its edge sounds like would be very helpful.
No, for sure. And just to get more, because again, we're a small team. It is literally me, myself, and I, 3 of us, myself, Morgan, and Arden. And then we are the ones who read the issue and talk about it. And in the past, like when I did 5 Ghosts and Violent Love, like I would sometimes like, not to name drop just because he is legitimately one of my closest, oldest friends, but W. Maxwell Prince, who writes Ice Cream Man, was my roommate in college, and I've known him forever. So he would like read 5 Ghosts for me and tell me, and I'm sure he thinks he's much smarter than me, so he would be like, this sucks, like you need to fix this. But I'd be like, hey man, shut up. And then Image does a quick proofread, but largely it was like just me seat in my pants doing it, and not really. This probably sounds crazy to people, and I'm making myself sound like an idiot, but you have to write comics really fast. Like I was working on 4 books a month, basically, like in the height of my career. And like, you don't get a lot of time to just sit down and really be precious with stuff and think about it or like plan things out. So with this book, because I knew it was very important to me and something I cared about, I want to build that infrastructure of like, hey, we're really thinking about this. We're ahead. We have world building documents. We have more than just myself idiot checking at any time, because I don't care who you are. Like, even if you think you're the best writer in the world, like having someone do a first read for you and just giving you a gut check is really important. And that's something I've really grown into as a professional writer, realizing like, hey, feedback is good. And obviously there's bad feedback, which we see on the internet all the time, but getting some up front and staying ahead of that is really useful. And I think it shows in the book. I think it's the best dialogue I've ever written. I think it's the best characterization I've ever gotten out in a book. And also on our team, obviously, Hassan Otsman Elhau is just doing absolutely beautiful lettering. I've wanted to work with him forever. And that's very personal to me because I lettered a lot of my own books quite badly. So having him on board, I actually lettered the pitch to this book and it looks so bad compared to what he did. It's the first 5 pages.
I mean,
and,
Haas is fantastic.
Yeah, and just this was like my project where I'm like, I'm just gonna go for it. Like I'm not gonna cut any corners, and we really want this to be the book it is. I feel like I'm rambling. Sorry, I had a long day, so
no, it's okay.
I'm
Go
out
ahead.
here.
Go ahead, Mike. I know
Actually, you did something that I haven't seen a lot of people do, which is you hand lettered your own presentation. A lot of folks won't do that because they're afraid it won't look professional enough. It's like, oh, who is this newcomer? Yeah, okay, well, maybe you've been around long enough so that people know your name at least, and you're showing it to people who know who you are. But nonetheless, the presentation itself, did you have to talk past that in order to get to the pitch?
I got to practice a lot, like early on, like with my lettering. Like I did like 2 graphic novels.
Yeah. I didn't include your lettering stuff in the.
Please don't. I stopped billing myself because I did not want to be known. But like again, I know like Ed Brisson did it for a long time, and he actually lettered a lot of other people's stuff. John Lehman lettered Chew himself. Like I remember talking to him about that, and like
he still gets upset when he can't letter his own stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, like
and so does Tony Fleece. So there's that.
Oh, does he? Oh, damn. I mainly would just cut stuff. Quite honestly, like on Violent Love with Victor, I would just like take out like all the dialogue and be like, he did a good enough job. There's no word I'm gonna add here that's gonna make it. And part of it's nice to be close to the art like that. Like, oh, I have to literally physically get in there and manipulate it and add to it. But honestly, at this point, like I just feel like it. I work with Taylor Esposito a lot too, who's fantastic, and he's done a lot of my comiXology stuff, and it honestly just helps create a little distance for me. It's honestly like very funny that now like we just turned in Author Immortal 4, and like Morgan sent over the art, and it was beautiful, but it wasn't really until I saw Haas's lettering that I like was reading the book, and it's interesting for me now to have that distance, and I think it gives me a little more objectivity. Obviously it's the end of the chain, so it's not like I'm going to change anything at that point other than change some words, but it's I don't know, maybe I just had like stupid youth confidence of like, sure, this looks good enough early on, but I mean, Five Ghosts looked fine. Mooneyham actually was going to hand letter that book, and I mean, there's no way he would have been able to put the book out on time. It wasn't on time to begin with, but it never would have go. But I was like, you can only do it if you don't misspell anything. And in the pitch, the first 5 pages are hand lettered, and he misspelled a word. I'm like, 5 pages, bro. It's all you got, and you messed it up. But in a way, I will say I'm glad he did hand letter it, as not to get into breaking in stuff, but like when we presented those pages before it was picked up, just at Comic-Cons, people were able to actually stop and read the pages in his portfolio because it had the lettering there, which I think was a little bit more of a hook versus had it just been the artwork. It kind of gave us the confidence because everyone read it. It was like, oh, this is the book you should be doing. But I don't need to talk about that guy. Let's talk about the author more. No, but yeah, it's been a delight having Haas, because as I said, I think he's done so much actual like design on the page, and I was likening it to like there's so much that is hard in comics that other mediums have, like music and voice acting or just acting, and obviously the art can serve with acting, but lettering can almost kind of help with voice a little bit on the page too. And I mean, you look at some great books where they've had great letters, and like simply by having some graphic design with the lettering, you can get such a different vibe across versus if it's all just kind of standard comic lettering. And I've grown to really appreciate that. Haas just kind of does his own thing too. I rarely give him I never give him notes. I just got to hand him the script and he figures out like kind of what to do. There's some crazy treatment with, you see it's in the last page of issue 3 with this character. We have the Harlequin King, who has this very crazy, like bright pink word balloons with a lot of design, and Haas just really showed up with that on the page, and I'm like, yes.
I mean, it's not a pop culture squadcast if we're not going to talk about lettering. That's pretty much how it goes. And I had a long conversation this weekend with some folks. We had a big lettering nerd fest go on. And Haas is definitely one of my favorites. He does things that are innovative and eye-catching, but also, while that's super important for really high quality lettering, the most important thing is to also be invisible. You know, when it needs to be, and when the story is just exploding, and you know, kind of pulling out, and he's able to do that.
He did a lot of thoughtful work. I'm sorry to cut you off, but just
go ahead.
so I don't forget, of making sure that his balloons meshed well with Morgan's watercolor art, because because bad lettering, which I've been guilty of many times, but can look like stickers, especially if you're doing sound effects. Like if you're old enough to know like what color forms were, remember those like little stickers? That's what always makes me think of, like the Ninja Turtles color form, where I'm like, bam, like just on there, and it looks out of place. But if you look at literally just the balloons alone, and Author Immortal, Haas like did this like hand stroke with them that makes them look like part of the art. And he actually did a lot of the sound effects. I think there's only like 1 or 2 little sound effects that Morgan painted, and he just very meticulously made sure it meshes. I think it looks good in digital, but in print, it really almost looks like they were just painted on. And again, I'm impressed.
The color forms thing, though. Oh man, you hit something for me. And there's a book that I hate, and I realize that's part of why I hate it.
No, it can just take.
I'm sorry. Which book did you hate?
I don't want to talk about it. I talked about it when I hated it a long time ago.
But you still hate it.
Oh, I still do. There was a time. I'm not going to name the names, but there were 2 books that came out like in succession. The number ones came out, and they were just so bad in so many different ways. And the lettering was a big factor in both of them. But I didn't realize how big the lettering was until the second one told you. You just said that. And it's colorful. That's good.
I mean, I remember, again, I won't get lost in comics nerdism, but recently like looked at the old, like the Quesada Kevin Smith Daredevil. And like, there's no standard in lettering. Like, I guess there's some now, but like, holy crap, the font size in that is like giant. And I'm like, what are you doing? And like those word balloons, again, it's jarring to see across the spectrum of comics, like where people end up, because there are some standards, but like, especially in the like late 90s, like it was kind of Calvin Ball, like, hey, sure, want your font size to be 20? Let's go.
Yeah, really. I've said this before, but on this broadcast, but the first lesson I got from a comics professional about how to do comics, as opposed to how to just do what you enjoy doing, was from Jim Steranko, and it was in 1969 at Phil Sewell's New York Con. He was looking at somebody else's portfolio and says, "This is really good work. What you should do is get it professionally lettered." And the kid says, you know, you can see he's thinking how much, but what he says is, "How do I do that?" And he says, "Well, there are plenty of professionals, and they're not very expensive, which is unfortunate, and it'll make your stuff look professional. They're professional letterers. Your stuff will look professional, it'll be easier to read. People who get 100 different projects thrown over the transom every day are just tired of all of this amateur stuff, you know, makes their head hurt. Get it professionally lettered." First lesson I had learned in what makes comics different from the other media in which I've been involved.
I think it's still totally true, right? Because there's so much work, like student work I see a lot too. Even if the art is like getting to professional quality, you'll see the lettering and be like, "Oh, buddy, like that is Comic Sans in a giant balloon you drew yourself. Like, what are you doing?" And it is just one of those polished things, right? And it's one of those things, especially when you're breaking in or pitching, you don't want those, like, I was gonna say invisible strikes, but they're quite visible strikes. Like, not to make all editors sound so cutthroat, but people are normally looking for a reason to take your stuff and throw it out of the pile. And bad lettering is just one of those that just immediately hits like that. So I think Steranko's gave some evergreen advice there. Yeah, he's
Absolutely. It was new to me. I mean, many years later, I was working with Marty Pasco on a project, and he said, "Who's going to letter this?" And I said something to the effect of, "Who do you want?" And he said, "Well, lettering is really important to me." And I said, "Well, of course." And he said, "It's as important to me as an inker's work is to a penciler." And I thought about that for a bit. That was that's the best line Marty ever wrote, as far as I'm concerned, because that really tells you what makes comics unique. The writer needs the letterer to translate his stuff for the folk, for the readers. And that's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to approach it.
And I've remained someone who really likes, I love comic book art, which is why I write comic books and just don't write novels. I love the collaborative process of seeing art and getting it adapted from my own words with collaborators. But honestly, I feel like so many writers, especially newer writers, are afraid that if they don't have dialogue on every page, people are going to forget they wrote it. And that kills me. I just let it breathe, for the love of God.
I mean, it's funny. I mean, we can talk about comics forever, and
I say this as you also probably were holding the wordiest comic I've ever written in my life.
No, but I'm actually holding Shade the Changing Man #2.
Okay, well, I didn't write that one. Fair.
Yeah, well, Mike's in this. Mike has a little blurb in the back of it because he was at DC at this time. He did an in memoriam for Edmund Hamilton.
Oh my, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't thought about that for a long time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but it's just looking at the way that you put words together, that you put a page together, and that's one of the things that I really love about this book. And it's there's not a great character in it. I mean, by great, I mean there's so many flaws in the characters, in each of them, and it's one of those things where it's messy from the get-go, and then chaos ensues, and the messiness is not. It's not like we shine this brilliant light on these amazing characters and said, "Oh my goodness, what terrible things will befall them." It's here's a bunch of crazy, crappy people, and shit's gonna happen. And how do we emerge from this chaos? Was that intentional for the characters to be as flawed as they are?
Absolutely. I think that's interesting. I think that's how people actually are, and I think it's funny because especially thinking of Hector, right? Who is very famously in the first few pages, committing infidelity, clearly going through a messy divorce, being kind of shitty to his kid and not necessarily understanding who they are or maybe being all that interested, but also getting kind of his dreams. And honestly, to me, that just feels like so much more of a real person. I didn't do this to vilify the man. And it's funny because I saw a range of reactions. Some people were
you're reading comments.
Oh, I read all the comments, man. I love hurting myself. Well, no, that goes back to feedback. I think it's important to see how stuff is being received. Obviously, you get some that are very unproductive, and it always makes you feel bad. No one's immune to that. My twin brother was in a professional band. He's like, I don't care if a 12-year-old at the concert says your band sucks. I take that to heart, and I immediately feel bad. But people know this. Someone tells you your shirt's ugly, it can be a stranger, you'll feel bad. But no, I put that on myself. But some people were like, this guy's the absolute worst piece of shit on the planet. What a fucking monster, horrible. I'm like, whoa, I mean, he's space, dude. He's listen, not great, but
again, the word is flawed. No, and in many ways real.
But in that dimensionality, I think needs to
In
go to
the
everyone in the book too, like because no one is showing up as this perfect paragon of
no,
righteousness and again, that, to me, like, as I just feel like it is so important to have and it's why, like, I'm sorry, Bob, I cut you off. I'm both tired and haven't talked to anyone all day, so here I am.
no, that's fine. We can keep talking. No, I was the writer who gives him the job, and I don't remember her name because
Her name is
terrible.
Deborah Luckwell.
Yes, well, we know who she is. We know who she is.
The character my lawyer won't let me call a different name.
Yeah, she is horrible. So she's 100% evil as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, with that, yeah, no redeeming qualities there. It's funny because
See?
Morgan always jumped to another one. Like, that is not a character we're trying to humanize in any way, shape, or form. If anything, bring some perspective to like how someone can just be a fucking asshole and let that perspective rule over fame, rule over just power, and like this character Deborah Luckwell basically gets herself canceled and ends up minor spoilers, but like becoming cursed and losing basically a lot of magical power in this world by being essentially transphobic and an asshole. And obviously it's a parallel for J.K. Rowling. In the real world, it looks like her. It's supposed to be influenced by her. And someone's like, this is so obvious. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like, it's supposed to be obvious. It's not a secret.
Like,
but,
I mean, it wasn't. It was. Of course, it was. I mean, when I described it, first thing I said was, so it's the J.K. Rowling of this universe.
Yeah.
And then she goes to for like it's the C.S. Lewis of or someone along those lines. And
social commentary is part of our job. Now, you could say, well, if you're writing Tom and Jerry, you don't really want to get way too political here. Guantanamo stories don't work with a cat and a rat. Okay,
Coyote
fine.
does.
Yes. I'm sorry,
but it does with the coyote.
Oh God, yes. Oh, sure, of course. Wow. So that, I mean, it's our job to comment on that because our job is to be truthful. We don't have to tell everybody's truth. We don't even have to always tell our own truth. We have to tell the character's truth.
And as I said earlier, this is what got me excited about the book. And one, I don't think there's a lot of just like, I know there is no fiction that's engaging with this. Like, obviously what is happening, the fact we have a writer who wrote basically one of the last like tent poles that was a huge part of people's life, who has outed herself as a just truly despicable villain and fucking up a lot of people's lives and just truly unapologetic. I don't care where you think you are in the political spectrum. Like, if you don't think what she's doing is wrong, you are incorrect. And using that clout to kind of change policy that is hurting people in a very active way, but is still alive. And when you buy her work, you directly support her. When you pay her, it goes, and that creates the conundrum that goes, well, I will say the book Author Immortal is not meant to solve the issue of death of the author. I'm intrigued by it and I'm troubled by it and I'm grappling with it. And that's what the work is doing. I'm not telling you how to feel or telling you to go home and throw out books by X, Y, or Z, but this is the truth of the matter. And I don't see that reflected in modern fiction, even though this has been happening for a few years now. And I'm not proud that we're the first people to do it, but it is something that I think everyone is grappling with. And I describe this as like a generational wound because I know so many people who have like Harry Potter tattoos and things like that who are now so hurt and could not be further away from her cause of just transphobia and policy that is hurting trans people and queer people in general. And there's this real struggle and disconnect about like, what the fuck do I do? Like, was my childhood fucked up because I read these books? Like, is this really like, it's causing a lot of friction. And really, we want this book to see that and say, hey, that's okay, that this is really happening. Like, but let's like at least explore how this can affect different characters and different people. And maybe you can figure out what you can kind of take from this, what you can use to build and move forward. And that's my big thing of like trying to say that, hey, we have a bunch of different characters who are going to be affected by a relationship to a story and each other in different ways. And all kind of figure out, for better or worse, where they land. And that's what we really hope the bigger metaphor here is of Death of the Author, about like taking what you need and moving forward and remembering it is about you and how you feel, not anyone else, not posturing, and hoping that's a productive conversation. But again, it's very real though. And again, obviously it was not directly referenced to our work. It happened after we were doing it, but Neil Gaiman also like being canceled for horrific things, like hugely affecting. I know a lot of people who worked with him directly who were just like stunned and can't even, and it's just the kind of thing where like
I still am, and Neil and I are friends. I mean, I haven't seen him for a couple of years, but it's been it's tough. You have no idea how to handle it. It's like, well, that's not the guy I've known. Well, yeah, it's not, but it's who he is.
And as I said, I've to be able to channel it actually into something productive that we're hoping ultimately is constructive. And as I said, why we didn't want to front load with this in our marketing or do interviews about just like, because it's not a hit piece. It's an exploration, and there's a purpose to his character. And really, like I said, we are not redeeming the rolling analog at all, but there's interest there. And I've done a ton of research, unfortunately, about J.K. Rowling, about her life, where she came from, her views, and there's no twist there. There's no weird like, oh, because of X, Y, but in learning that and how to actually channel that into meaningful fiction, I'm also hoping that if someone stumbles upon this book and hasn't really engaged with this or seen the harm it's causing, like this could potentially open up like, oh wait, what is this based on? Like what based on? But you know what I mean? Like, because we see in our story people who are affected by this, and maybe just create some empathy for a cause that is beyond people who think that this doesn't affect their lives and they shouldn't care. I don't know. That's my pie in the sky. Like, I'm not telling anyone how to feel, but like at least create that empathy where you are reading about characters who maybe are not just like you, and seeing that something that you thought was maybe not that big of a deal can really be a big deal to someone and affect them in a deeper level. And as I said, it's been really useful to do research, to work with our editor, who again is not a straight person like I am, and help kind of bring different identities and different lenses to this, and really talk to people in my own life who are deeply affected, and just think about like, hey, like this isn't a stunt. This is, I think, something that we're all grappling with in not only my generation, but beyond, and kind of create something productive. And again, also tell a good story. But as I said, this is what galvanized me to want to do the book. This is the interesting part to me. And
it should be. It should be what galvanized you. There are, unfortunately, a shitload of people who have opinions similar to Ms. Realm. And I mean, by a shitload, I mean literally, there's got to be over 1 billion people on this planet who share those opinions. She, by virtue of the fact that she has decided to use her platform, a platform she built, to advocate for evil, and this is evil. She is evil, in my mind. Makes her fair game, and makes her the right target, because she's not the target. She's the symptom.
That's a few people were like, oh man, aren't you like afraid? I'm like, what? Like, this is a fucking famous person too. Like, I should be so lucky to ever be on the radar of anyone who gives a shit. Like, but again, people like won't say her name. Like, they'll be like, oh, there's someone in here. It's like, what? Like, dude, you're not gonna
She who should not be named.
yeah. But regardless, as I said, that is, when that piece kind of came in for me, it really helped kind of bring it, because as I said, a lot of people have written portal fantasy. I think the idea of like writers writing about writing is very, I don't want to say pat, but like it's what we do, right? It's like when every band makes their second record about touring because they've been touring. But for me, that like really, yeah. And then the only people who can really relate to it are other people in bands who are like, yeah, touring is crazy. But no, I'm very excited about where we came from it, because I think a lot of where we get to in the book is kind of these layers of, again, we have Hector, who is basically making this compromise to get his dream, but he knows it's wrong. And one of the things
it's a monkey, it's a Faustian bargain from the beginning, and he's got to know it. I mean, like you feel like he knows it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, immediately talking to Al in the first issue is they're just very upfront, like, oh, cool. How do you think this makes me feel? And I know just so many parents where like your life changes so much when you have a kid because things that you want to be even proud of or involved with suddenly has a new lens, especially when your kid gets to an age where they have their own opinions and really kind of turns into their own person. And one of the things is, so Hector's child Al is named after Alethea, the main character from these lost novels that he's obsessed with. And I say love, like I'm fascinated by people who name their kids after book characters, like because sometimes like I feel for every kid named after a Harry Potter character.
Sure.
And so Hector named his kid after this character who meant so much to him, and now their kid is a teenager. First of all, doesn't even want to go by the assigned name, goes by Al instead, and doesn't really seem to give a shit about the books he loves so much. And just that,
Right.
I think that dichotomy is so interesting to me. This idea that you almost like tried to like imprint your fandom on your kid, and we get much more into the relationship as we go forward and show that they did care about the books at some point and maybe still do have some of that in them. But that is just a dimension that I think, like, talk about metafiction, like you almost like put your kid into it. But then we have the relationship of the writer Vossler, who put his actual daughter's like soul, we infer this in the first issue, into his book to help. And how is that a different mechanism of control? What does that mean? And these are all just the kind of layers that we found as we've been working on this that I've been so intrigued by. And as I said, then it all collides with this idea of like, how does fandom own something? What does it really mean to look
Right.
at death of the author?
Sure.
And just a lot of stuff that I've grappled with and I find fascinating. And then on top of that, just number one thing, going back to kind of reading the comments, so to speak. Sometimes people just don't like stuff. Sometimes people are predisposed to hate things. Sometimes people don't care. But the only like criticism that really gets me is if people find work generic or kind of have no response. Like you're just like, meh, this happened, because that means there was nothing in there that even really got reaction, or it was so samey. And with this book, like I have pushed myself, not in a cartoonish way of like, oh, we're going to zip instead of zag or like do a crazy cliffhanger, but like, it really is going somewhere very specific that I do not think is obvious in any way, shape, or form. And I know metafiction, again, or just like the arc of fiction, like, oh, like, hey, we have a character who has some flaws, he's going to redeem them and we'll move on and everyone will go home happy. And like, it's not how the first arc of our series ends. We're in planning for a longer story. Like, it's not a done in one, like, and then everyone turned around and hugged and learned their lesson. And
Right.
I
It's
just
not
know.
it's Earth isn't a sitcom, you know. The bottom line is it's your name on the book as writer. So the opinions expressed, even if they're not your opinions, they're the character's opinions, you're going to be held responsible for some of those opinions by some people. Other people, and there's overlap here, are going to just miss the point. Maybe they've just been reading too much, or their mind wanders for a second, or the phone rings, or whatever. There's a million reasons why a normally sane person could miss something important in a story. Comics. If you get lost, go back and reread it. It's not that big a deal. It's I understand if you're in the middle of War and Peace and you can't keep the characters straight, you got a problem. But this shouldn't be a problem, and critics should recognize that there's a difference between the creator's opinions, which aren't really all that important, and the character's opinions, which do count.
I think there's been, like, again, not to get too into my views of just media literacy, but I'm a writing teacher as well. And I mean, I think it's almost comes with the territory of being a writer. People inevitably ask you, but like, I'm a very practical writing teacher, and I think everyone should be telling stories. I think who you are, I think everyone's creative, everyone's interesting. There is stuff to explore. There are things to say. And people just normally aren't given the tools. A lot of times it's gatekept, or they think writers are just these special people who are able to catch like butterflies with honey and see deep into the void in a way that no one else can, versus like, no, like, write what compels you, right? What you're interested in, explore.
That's
like,
right.
and where was I going with this? But I think a big problem with this is, like you're saying, a lot of times people who aren't aware of what writing is think that every character who's speaking in the book is you speaking. And hence, if you have a character who's problematic or difficult or even a villain, like, oh my gosh, well, Frank Barbiere wrote that, he must feel that in some capacity. It's like, no, man, that's so far from the process. And the fact that
That's right.
media literacy has gotten lost kills me. But I always think of like, I don't know, I'm sure many people have said it, but I think Jason Aaron had said it as I love Scalped in that Vertigo Oov, like, he's like, yeah, like when I got over the fact that my parents might read something like and stopped caring about that, I was freed from just like, oh, like no one's gonna yell at me. And as I said, I don't know. I'm also someone who believes in, especially at this point, like I've written some stuff that was like fun and just like happened, and then no one probably really thought about it anymore. But like, I think good art at this point should like not be edgy, but say like maybe feel a little uncomfortable. Like, oh wow, like they're
Sure.
going for that, they're exploring that. And for myself, like at this point in my career, like I don't want to write a fucking comic where Iron Man just like punches a guy and goes home and is like, we won. Like that's no longer what I care about exploring. Like there are things I care about in this world that I grapple with. And I'm a huge pusher of like thematic intent in work. And I think one of the things that has caused this erosion of trust is we've been living in an era. Like I literally tweeted about this the other day after I saw someone talk about how fandom and audiences misunderstand foreshadowing now because they think everything needs to be a goddamn secret because of J.J. Abrams. But like, I think we've been living in this 20-year vacuum of just storytelling becoming commodity and product and now like content, and people have lost what it's for. And like, I remember that fucking jackass who wrote Game of Thrones being like, theme is for 8th grade book reports. And it's like, you stupid motherfucker, that you could be adapting this heavily thematic book and say something. But again, your work should be about something, even if it is about entertaining the audience. How are you doing that? Like, again, I have some friends who would probably punch me in the mouth for saying this, but truly, like, you are the writer. It's your time, buddy. Go for it. Like, say what you're going to say and feel it. And for me, I know that makes my work feel so much better and so much more important. And let me emphasize, you can do this with IP as well. This was the big thing that broke through to me at Marvel. Like, oh, wow, like people are coming in for Spider-Man. I can now also put some of me in here. And yeah, maybe some people won't like that. And it's about finding balance. Like, who is it? Said, if you want to send a message, use Western Union. But no, but I think there's been a lot of just like, erosion of purposeful thematic content in work because people are either afraid of sounding preachy or like, I don't know, being misconstrued. But even when I'll tell young people, I would rather you sound a little preachy and your work be about something to me than just like read vapid bullshit that doesn't mean anything. So it's at least why I'm not afraid to do a book that I think maybe some people will be polarized by, but I think it really has substance to it. And again, we've gotten a lot of really good feedback from people who have enjoyed the story, are glad that we're talking about the things we're talking about, that feel seen by the story. And even just getting one of those letters is enough for me to validate, like, okay, I'm glad that this is at least resonating with, I think, the people. I don't want to say who it's for, but again, I can tell you there are some people who this book is not for. And
Well,
cool, man. Like that's your journey. Don't,
I mean, it's for me.
well, hell yes.
So, but no, one of the things I wanted to talk.
Sorry, my TED talk has completed.
You that's fine. It's fine. We did name our cat Grayson. So I mean, there's that.
Hey.
But yeah, and sometimes he's a dick, but that's how it goes.
Look, there are some people out there in the real world, and also in our world, if they learn something or if they feel like you're advocating something or you're trying to make a point that they don't know, if they feel like they're being lectured to. Now, this isn't 24/7. Sometimes they feel this way, sometimes they don't. To a certain extent, we all feel that way. We get a little touchy about God knows what. And that sucks. But that process of provoking somebody to start thinking like that, part of the job.
So, and I will say that one of the things you touched on was kind of the very end there. You were talking about how in licensed stuff and IP, when that it can be thematic. And I will tell you that, Marvel and DC, I read a lot of comic books, and when when the creative team kind of really takes a thematic approach to a story, to a character, that we uses that character as a storytelling mechanism, not just, I need to do this with Fantastic Four because I have to do this, and that.
Because that's what's
Or
expected.
for example, if I take this guy and turn it into a great metaphor about whatever, I mean, it works. It can work.
And again, I love Marvel and DC. Like the reason I started working in comics was because of that. I mean, I like to sound cool and say I discovered Image through Bendis, right when Ultimate Spider-Man was coming out. Also, I discovered Powers, and that kind of brought me in. But like, I wasn't like reading indie zines or anything. Obviously, there's a lot of great work in many forms,
Sure.
but I never try to sound cooler than I am. Like I was a Marvel kid, and I find, like you said, the people whose work I really resonated with over the years, when I really thought about it, were the people who like, oh wow, like not only did they love the toys, because there's a part of that too. Like, you don't want to see someone just like fuck something up just to be a dick, but like,
right.
But like had a point of view and were able to kind of look past just like the fun and spectacle and say like, oh, like this is actually about this, and this is how I'm going to use that to my purpose, and things like that. And yeah, of course, maybe there will be a lot of people like, again, I love Grant Morrison, and their run on Batman is fantastic. And I just remember when RIP was coming out, I remember seeing some people being like, I can't even understand this comic. What the fuck? And it's like, well, dude, like, I mean, can you at least appreciate it's different like that than what you've read a million times before? Can you maybe almost like what you're saying, Mike, like, I know there's a little discomfort there, but maybe push past that and discover something new, or at least come out of it saying like, hey, I don't like surrealism or something like that. Not just like be so aggro about the fact it. And again, I think that's awesome when, again, I love John Hickman, and I've been fortunate enough to work with John at Three Worlds, Three Moons for a few years. But like, I remember I loved that his Avengers run, which I also have a soft spot for because I wrote into it when I wrote Avengers World and the New Avengers Annual. But I was a huge fan of it, which is partly how I got that job. I pitched a book that made sense in the context of that book. I knew some of my friends who pitched and just pitched completely outside. I'm like, what do you mean you're not reading it? Like, how do you expect to know what's going on? But I love that the Avengers book, and obviously we're in a little bit of a different landscape post the MCU blowing up, but I love that the Avengers book was so weird and Hickman when the movie came out. Like, they didn't make him tie into the movie directly. It managed to be this, like, he's like, oh, it's this great Avengers machine that's going to end in Secret Wars. And I thought that was so cool. It was very singularly his and his collaborators versus just having to be like a reflection of what we saw on the screen. And again, that always excites me about cool work going. Again, I think DC is doing a lot of that right now with the Absolute line too, right? Like, it and Marvel Ultimate, even though it's a little bit of a different thing, but like, that is the exciting thing of like, hey, when we can have these legacy characters and then give voice to the creators on it as well, I think it makes me happy when I see that resonate with an audience, because I think even if people don't know they want that, that's what they really do want in their heart of hearts. And I think we can trace that to every big breakthrough in comics over the years, because I don't know, this has become a me going for it combo, but truly, again, it's
this is good. This is good stuff, Frank. The reality is that every once in a while there's going to be a great story out there that you're going to do that some people are not going to get. They're going to drop out halfway through or whatever. They're just not going to seize upon your point. Well, you can't read their minds so that you can adjust your point to their consciousness, because you've got a million readers out there. You can't do it for everybody, and you can't do it to anybody, quite frankly. It's okay if you lose the reader once or twice.
That's the grace, right? That comes with like doing more work. Because I know early on there's this fear of like, oh my gosh, if people don't like what I'm doing, will I be able to get another job in comics? Versus like, once you get out there, like, obviously there is still that pressure always of like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to have my audience completely turn on me, but like, I think you can like be a little more comfortable. Like, well, not everyone liked this one, but you know what? Like, I like this, and I was doing my best work, and I thought this was interesting, and I wasn't just doing the job. I had something I wanted to say here, and it's interesting. I got a chance to talk to do like a class actually with JM DeMatteis when I worked at Activision, and I was talking to him about Kraven's Last Hunt, and I was like, yeah, like, how did you feel when you were working on that? He's like, that was just a job to me. Like, I'm so glad it resonated with people and
Yeah.
it worked, but like, I was just showing up for work. And I totally get that, but like, I was like a little like, oh man, like that
Yeah.
feels like not bad, but like, oh, like, but I always say, and obviously a bit of a different generation, but I've had the privilege of knowing Greg Pak for a long time. And I remember we were driving to a convention once, and he hitched a ride with me and a friend, and again, super nice guy. And I was talking to him about Hulk, and I was like, so when you wrote Planet Hulk, he's like, Hulk is my favorite character, and that was the dream story I wanted to do with Hulk. I'm like, that's what I want to hear when someone writes a story. I'm like, that warms my heart. So hell yeah, buddy, that's where it's at. But again, it goes both ways. And again, I'm sure everyone's felt it in their work. Like, oh, sometimes you do feel like you're just working, but I do think pieces of you still slip through.
I think that's fair. I think that we find that with all. I had this conversation actually this weekend with a letterer, and I said, are there times when you're just putting character, letter character next to letter character next to letter character, and you don't, you're just doing that. And this is the person I like and his friend, and they said sometimes, usually on those long graphic novels when you get to the end of it, but 90% of the time, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing and putting those pieces together and putting the letter forms carefully where they belong, as opposed to just getting the job done. And it's one of the things about comics that you can tell when the creative team loves what they're doing and loves the topic and the things that they're putting together. And we, in this book, we 100% feel that. It's messy and wonderful, and I can't wait for arc after arc.
Well, thank you so much. It is. I'm shutting up.
Okay. Well, I want to turn to a little bit something else. I just for a sec. You stopped writing comics on a regular basis, and you worked in gaming. And what do you how did you find that difference for you in terms of the well, how different was it?
It's a whole different beast in a lot of ways. Like one, like
again, I spent a lot of time with Ron Mars this weekend, so there's that.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
so
I love. I've again had privilege of becoming friends with him through Steve Orlando when I lived up in Albany, and again, he is a real one, and again, someone who's has done has a tremendous career that I can't even.
And is bridging that gap right now, doing both comics and video games.
I worked with him at Activision for a little bit. Funny enough,
sure.
like so, it's so games is. I'm a very collaborative person. I think this is why I like comics. But like even with comics, it's 3 or 4 people, and also like my name happens to be on the comic on the front. But in the game, there's the whole video game part, which takes front seat for many, many games, not the story. So you are just kind of like a cog in, not as pejorative as that sounds, like, but like a small piece of a much bigger tapestry. And there's some beauty in that because it is like, oh, like I know there's a lot of other people working on this and I'm not the most important person, and it's many people's visions. And again, most of the time it is also IP based, or you probably didn't create it unless you are the game director, which I certainly am not. And it takes a little bit of the like stress off for me because I know like I am not the guy, like I'm not the person who this all hinges on. But at the same time, there is also some frustration of also like story is not the priority with many video games. So like you will have to rewrite everything, like a whole piece of something you worked on that you really cared about could get pulled out at the last second, or many different invisible stakeholders will show up, rewrite what you wrote, or just like hand it off to other people. And again, I've had a very fortunate career where like at Activision, when I worked on Destiny has so many stakeholders, and I straight up wrote the missions for our content, but it all got completely changed and gutted and moved around. And I still felt a lot of what I contributed. And I wrote a lot of lore that was just word for word what I wrote, which was nice. But again, it wasn't like writing a comic. So just learning that is very different than learning kind of your place, which is why a lot of gamers like, I want to write video games. I'm like, buddy, like it's having a job again. You're going back to square one. You're not going to be the hot dude in the production. You're going to be you're going to be like, hey, we need 100 lines about getting punched. Can you write them tomorrow? Please. And yeah, you'll get health insurance though. So congrats. But
well, what do you think about?
I was just say I've been very fortunate since though that the other studios I've been at, I've been the only writer working directly with the game director, and one of whom was Joe Madeira at Airship Syndicate. I wrote again, who I was a huge fan of. So it was a super nice dude. It was so nice to get to know him and work with him for 3 years. We wrote Darksiders Genesis, and he had created the IP of Darksiders and was able to write it with me and tell me everything he wanted in there, and just a really excellent creative. And even though he probably doesn't bill himself as a writer, just has a great instinct and is funny and knows knows what sounds good on the page. Basically, he has a good creative sense. Some people don't, and you'll have to sit there and really fight with them. But Joe was great. And then we wrote a League of Legends game called Ruined King, which was, despite being for a very big company, Riot, with a lot of stakeholders, very well contained between really me, Joe, our president of our company actually contributed a little bit too, and an editor at Riot named Laura Mache, who was an absolute delight and wrote a lot of the game with us as well. Like, I just feel like, and then Behemoth, which I just wrote at Skydance like a year ago, but came out, I wrote the whole script just along with my narrative director. So I've had a lot of projects that I feel like do have a lot of me in them, despite that not always being the case. But still, as I said, it gets diluted, not to sound so negative, but it gets diluted through the process. There's a lot of other moving parts, and there's a whole game part. But I will say one of the big things is, one, having those other people working with me taught me the importance of maybe just getting some other perspective. Like, even when I think my work is right, like to have someone else just read it and tell me what it did for them when it's not the customer, especially in comics. I'm happy that comics can turn around really quick. You do get feedback pretty fast, for better or worse. Sure. Many writers I know in games work on games for 2-3 years and then don't see anything till the game comes out. In 1 week, they get a bunch of people yelling at them on Twitter, and then back to the vacuum. And I don't know how to, like, what my work means. And I'm always thankful that I've managed to get like quick results from comics, especially kind of growing up in the comic shop. Like, I was a little older when I broke in. I was around 25 or 26, but I wasn't a professional writer, so to speak. Like, my first book was my first book, and like, it was coming out, and it was next to books that were much, much better than mine on the shelf. And I got that feedback constantly, and I learned quickly, like, okay, if I try to do something non sequitur and surreal, people tell me I'm a fucking idiot. Or if I do something like this, and you almost kind of learn the levers you can pull, which again can hurt, and you kind of fuck up in front of an audience, but you learn and grow from that. And blah, blah, blah. But also working with voice actors has been tremendous. I think it's taught me a lot about just, and again, the oldest advice that everyone says, which everyone knows, but no one does all the time, of read your work out loud. Like, yeah, read your work out loud. Because when you start writing for actors and they try to read a bad sentence you wrote, you feel very stupid very fast, of like, oh, or like words that actually rhyme. Yeah, right. You know this. Frank Barbiere, for much of his career, probably. Well, comics is one of those things, right, where you can get away with it because it's read on the page silently. So again, if you're writing clunky dialogue, people will know, but it's not as bad as if someone's watching a TV show and the dialogue is terrible. So I feel like for comics writing, sometimes you can like forget to kind of check yourself like that there is almost like people are hearing it in their minds. So they are kind of still hearing it, but more so the positive of that was really learning just like how to write with subtext because I'm hearing someone perform it, and it has carried over into my comic writing as well. Even though it's not
That's
being
good.
performed, I know, like, again, I can write hello, and based on the acting and based on just how the panel is staged, I don't have to be like, Jonathan, I'm angry at you right now. I can have someone just saying hi, but then based on the moment, that subtext can carry through as well. And again, we know this, but to get to do it with actors and hear an actor say hello 5,000 different ways, like, just almost kind of like is one of those visceral reminders of like, oh wow, yeah, that's right. Like, performing can change what words mean, and blah blah blah. But it's been a delay. I still do it. I actually just started at another company, and as I said, practical reasons, they give you health insurance, and it's fucking insane. Marvel DC, their exclusive people health insurance. Like, sorry guys, that's stupid, and you really should do that. And I just the poverty level that they keep professional comic creators at across the board is horrific to me. And the fact that
Here.
I mean, I was a full-time writer in comics for 6 years, and not that long for many people, and it like was a horrible roller coaster ride. And I have friends now who've done it much, much, much longer than that. And truly, like, it saddens me to have. I don't want to get totally into this, but you know what I mean. You're under.
Yeah, no,
You're undercompensated.
They're my friends too. I'm and I know what it's like. I have one question that we had that was kind of pre-given to me, and so I'm going to ask you. Well, no, that one. I got another one of those. This one was for my son. He wanted to know what you thought about Dispatch and the way that is being done, and there's some discussion over the concept of a video game as a show, and how does that? What do you think of that?
It's funny because I love narrative games. I think there are a lot of like experimental games that feature very little gameplay but a lot of storytelling, and I think like I'm very glad to see Dispatch do well in spite of that. Like, they added like there's a little mini game, but like I think people like stories, and they want in the idea of having a little bit of interactivity in a story doesn't always have to mean that you completely derail it or change it, because this is one of my gripes about some video games where they try to give you too much choice. I feel like as a writer, it's very hard to write towards a meaningful ending if we're like, well, the main character can be evil or good or something in the middle. It's like, well, then what theme are we saying? Like, what are we trying to communicate? Is it three different things?
Damn
So
themes again.
but so I think linearity is good, and to see a product like that succeed makes me really happy because there's space for it. And again, we don't need. It's 2025. We're so far past someone being, well, that's not a real video game because you don't, like, again, press X and the character jumps. And I'm glad to see, I think, younger people coming into the space, a lot of indie developers doing just really thought-provoking stuff where they're doing more surreal work, like in using the medium well. I mean, Dispatch, and I say non-disparagingly because I think it's a great game and great product and great story, but like is very much like in that mode where it's almost like watching a movie with like some slight interactivity. But like, I've been very intrigued by games that are just like still have strong narrative foundations, but are not necessarily a traditional story, or you're not even getting dialogue in some cases. And I think it's a really exciting medium to be a writer in once you get past the fact, like, oh, they don't all have to be just these like movie games. I say like again, your Last of Us, your God of War, which are great games, but like are a huge risk because if someone doesn't like the story of those games, they don't like that game. And
Sure.
There's so many other parts of that game. And I think a lot more games that are experiential, blah, blah, blah. But no, Dispatch, I'm very happy to see succeed. And I think is a cool product. I think we can use more of that because again, I just think we need more stories and more stories that take risks and are different takes because, we really only get them in the mainstream through Hollywood right now, which I think I've shown that I'm pretty bummed out on. But I think at least games, while being much younger, like can take some swings that maybe you cannot at Netflix. I don't know, like, but and again, typically I think like comics, a lot of people work in games, especially as you get more towards indie, are very, very passionate people who really care about what they're making, who have given up a lot of their time in life, like many creatives, to create this work. And again, knowing that there's space for not just one type of product is great, because I think it shows the health of a medium and the health of an art form to kind of get different stuff going.
what appeals to me most about folks like you going into the gaming industry is that you are trained both by predilection as a child and by experience as a professional to think and write visually.
Mm.
And that applies obviously directly to video games. But when you said what you should do if you're writing a video game is read the dialogue out loud, I laughed internally. I've done a little bit of voice acting.
Oh wow.
I have a broadcasting background among other strange things, and I've done a little bit of that, and I never did my stuff. I would do writers' stuff, and I would rehearse and do it out loud, and I'd say, "You can't. People won't talk like that."
Yeah. That's my nightmare, right? That performer calling me on my BS, being like, "What are you doing?
What are you doing?" It's like, okay, maybe that's just a dialect I'm not familiar with, but it's not working for me. And there's not much you can do as a voice actor unless you're doing a session live,
No.
not live, but in studio as opposed to at home with all these wires and tubes and stuff. It can be very frustrating. Um, and if you know any writers, and a lot of us do, who have had to be on set while their TV show was being butchered, you just shake your head and go, "Boy, that's not the life for me." I'm amazed you can put up with that.
Listen. I will say that this summer I saw Howard Chaykin scream across the room at John Wesley Shipp about a line that he said in Flash 30 years ago. Like, writers will remember that.
Let me tell you a quick story. I was out there while they were filming the Ship series. I wrote the proposal for the TV series for DC, and Flash was one of the characters in my editorial group. So I got to babysit a little bit. Brian Augustin did a lot more of that, and we were there for some of the filming, including the one scene where Mark Hamill, as the trickster, ties up Howard Chaykin and his co-writer, whose name escapes me right now. They tie up to a chair, and the bad guy is just threatening him and doing all this bad guy stuff. And Mark was doing a wonderful job, and he looked great as the trickster. But I've known Howard since pretty much the year of Gimmel, and seeing him tied up like that in what really could look like a Batman 1960s TV show environment, I got to tell you, that's just one of the most wonderful moments in my life.
I will say too quickly, because you said Brian Augustin, like one of my favorite series of all time was Crimson that I did with Humberto Ramos. So much love there.
He's a good guy. Good guy. I brought him out from Chicago.
You were was it John Francis Moore that you couldn't remember?
Yeah.
So
I'm surprised I can remember my name though. So
I understand. Listen, I have one more question.
Please. Yeah, I know I've talked a lot at you, but I appreciate it.
How many burritos can you fit in your mouth?
Many.
I was told to ask that question.
I'm imagining that came from Steve Orlando.
I wouldn't. I mean, could be. I mean, I said he's.
I think he has I think he has several photos of me with burritos in my mouth. So
I understand. I want to come back one more time to Author Immortal before we wrap this up. Issue 3 comes out when?
December 17th. So next week.
What is the publishing plans? Is there 5 issue first arc, 6 issue first arc?
5 issue arcs, yeah. So
and are we looking at a break between arcs?
We did not want to, but we probably will be strategizing after this one. So I don't think we've solicited for. Oh gosh, it's so annoying because it's 3 months ahead. Because we're issue 3 is this month, December. 4 is January. 5 is February. Then collection is March, and then April in bookstores. Like
Yeah.
So then we've not solicited past that yet, but we're trying to stick to five issue collections is really our plan.
Good.
Yeah, that's the minimum you need to be seen in a bookstore. The collected edition to be seen in the bookstore.
And I will say, just from the financial part of it, like it's nice if you can do 4 issue trades for $16.99, but I just could not tell a satisfying story arc in 4. And even with us, like we did issue 1 at 40 pages, so it's basically 6 issues in the first collection. And I will say, just getting back to pet peeves, I don't know why I want to complain so much, but one of the things that we were talking about the audience, like, and I have publicly stated this on the internet, so I don't feel bad, but like, especially considering Author Immortal, because I'll leave it at this. I really am so excited for people to see the end of this first arc and read it together, even though we try to write it for single issue enjoyment, but like 22 pages is not a lot of room. Like, obviously it will feel better as a whole piece. And it's the thing that kills me about comic reviews. Like, see people just like, oh, well, this is bad. And they've read 20 pages of what is at least a like 80 to 120 page story. And I'm like,
that's what makes it hard though, to be able to get past that. Like, say,
I will say what I think happens, unfortunately, with a lot of books is I feel like they rush to throw an action scene in the first issue or something like very heavy and don't take the time to set up the story properly. And I saw this a little with Author Immortal, even though it's 40 page first issue, like there is a lot of conversation and characterization and table setting that I think is all super important, because it is all going to matter when the first cliffhanger really hits at issue 5, that we set that up properly. And I feel like the arc I see of a lot of miniseries or arcs is people will love on issue 1, kind of ride through issue 2, 3, 4, and then not really like how issue 5 ends up, because there's just not the space to properly. The number one thing I've learned in my career and everything is, if stuff is not hitting at the end, you did not set it up in the beginning. And for me, it was so important to spend some time to these characters, get to learn their flaws up front, get to learn their misbeliefs about the world or in like what's happening, so we can start challenging that. And I think the people who are excited to read ongoings get that, which is nice. But I definitely seen some people who were like, nothing really happened. And I'm just like, oh my God, just please give it a minute. I assure you there's a plan. And again, it's the kind of thing where I think like,
that's, I get your point, and I get what people say that, but that just shows that they're not, nothing has to happen.
Well, also true. Yeah.
We're in a transitional moment in comics, and this moment has lasted, so far it's lasted over a generation, but that's how comics works. We are transitioning from the 12-page story to the 22-page story to the 5-issue story arc to the graphic novel, to the novel length story. And those are different animals.
Yeah.
So we have to pace ourselves differently, and we have to train the reader. And you'd think over the course of the last 30 years we would have done this. We haven't. To be a little, to exercise their patience a little different.
I won't get deep into craft stuff because we will be here another 3 hours, but I do love the single issue as like a unit. I think like many modern writers are fantastic with this, but Brian K. Vaughan jumps to mind in Saga. Like every issue of Saga largely has like kind of like a cold open, goes through and feels, I hate having to compare to TV, but feels like a good episode of television in that it's structured in such to be enjoyed for the amount of space it is and have like one kind of movement and kind of propulsion. And we've really tried to model with that with Author Immortal. And
he's done that with other things. I mean, like kind of, he did the same thing even in Y, where
he's just an extremely good writer. He's a very craft oriented writer, which is why I love him, and gets that, and that's built into him. in really, like, again, it's like we want you to feel that in our single issues, but also there is a macro story, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so sometimes I've done it myself. Like, I just see it, and I don't know. I'm not trying to put anyone on blast, but I know when people rush to get action up front and things like that because they think that's all people are going to care about. But I feel like it does so much work into service because we want to get the beginning of the story at the beginning, not just kind of like be like, okay, we're going to jump back and try to fill you in issue 2. And Lord knows I've done it myself, but alas, this is a story we really care about. Clearly I have some big opinions about it. And but we're building it to be a rewarding read and something that really, hopefully you find unexpected, but charming and familiar, and really engage with some stuff that I think not a lot of work is engaging with. If you just like storytelling and stories, we hope we can charm you, and really do have a big plan for it. So we would love people to stick around, which is great. It's the biggest, like, it's the most like outlining and pre-writing I've ever done for a book, which has been really satisfying because that is probably another thing I took from games, to actually have some not as much as you ever want, because it's always a little building the ship in water, but to at least do some of like, hey, like, let's do some like world building as related to character and story, not just what
Like,
kind of coins do the elves use, but
it's
actually take some time to do some
question,
pre-writing and planning. Yeah.
right? It's a question that I have asked people, and I've asked somebody like Philip Johnson, like, how much, for example, Philip Johnson's Alien run, and how much of that story never made a page. Like, I'm sure he wrote volumes of stuff that never happened just because he needed to have that there, and to do that is important, and being able to, but I think you're doing it in a way where you have where it informs what hits the page in certain ways.
I will say it was just so weird to me because we were done with 3 issues before we solicited this book, and I had kind of been reading those as one chunk in my brain. Like, obviously they were separate, but it's been very interesting to watch the audience start to catch up now, because only 2 is out, and 2 is fascinating because it's a much breezier issue than issue 1, because issue 1 is a lot of conversation front loaded, but 2 is really important to me because we introduce the character of Alethea, who is basically a barbarian, and we get a fight scene and another context. And I was really surprised to see some people like had said like, oh, there wasn't like as much meat on the bone here, and I'm like,
no, I disagree. I understand the point. I think I see the point what you're going to make, because while it wasn't as first of all, it's half the size, but second of all, it's there was a lot of story told despite. I kind of want to talk. We can go forever. Like, I want to talk about Alethea and who she is, and how she really exploded in that issue of, being there and having to deal with these strangers to her world and the damage that's being done by this monstrous thing there. She just really jumped off the page, but I thought that was, I hope that she's as important to it as I think she's going to be.
It is a like kind of like triple lead there between Hector, Al, and Alethea, and they've all got their angles to play, and all could probably support their own stories, which is interesting, which is why it's been enjoyed. Like, that's great stuff to discover as a writer. Like, oh, like we've done enough, and again, Morgan's design it's so good for all the characters. But Alethea, like, again, coming from the premise of, I thought it was so fascinating. Like, oh, like, what if you went into your favorite story and the character you thought was supposed to be Hermione is now a barbarian? Like, and that's basically what happens to Hector. This is supposed to be like a little girl mage whom he named his kid after, who's this idyllic, like, oh, like a perfect person. And when he engages her in this world of the story, she is a fairly rough around the edges barbarian that cannot be further from his expectation. And again, I love the not entirely subtle metaphor of that, of who you expect people to be, and just like considering other things going on in his life. And that was another big driver of the book to me. I love this idea of like going into a story and it being, and again, you being an expert on that story and then being like, oh, it's nothing like I actually thought, because if people are actually alive and making choices, you can't just paint them in a box. And again, there's a lot to unpack there that we won't get to. And as I said, it's not a a huge mystery. We see an issue in like the second page that she gets that flashback of memories with Vossler, and clearly putting that together. And again, it's meant to be cagey enough, but not to hold on.
Bobby, I have a cat emergency. I'll be back in a minute.
All right.
No.
So, excuse me.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you for engaging with it. It's stuff we care about, and I could talk about for a long time, clearly. But
absolutely. It's super. Like I said, the book is great, and I'm so glad you were here to do it, to talk about it. And to be honest with you, I encountered it when we were having Morgan on, because I was like, wait, you're doing a book with Frank? Hang on, let's talk about that. Because it was just solicited, I think. I don't think issue 1 was actually solicited. Like, there was like talk about it. Like, you just started talking about it.
We had been like posting pages and stuff, for a while, and like kind of like
it was back in June that we had her on, and so it was, but again, I think you both really hit it. It's engulfing. It's really fall into the pages, and that's a tribute to both of you and how that works.
Well, and again, I'll use that to praise Morgan again, that she has just done such beautiful work. Like, it is, again, I know people can read comics pretty quickly, but my gosh, the amount of care and attention and detail she's put into a lot of those pages, like, you can really live in that book if you want to. And again, I'm so thankful to her as a collaborator that she, again, is putting that much love and again, watercoloring the book with actual watercolors. It's not digital. She's painting every page. Yeah.
Yes, she's ridiculous like that too. Like, I mean, there are not many people out there doing the thing she's doing, and to do it at the level that she's doing it is
and as I said, in monthly, which is crazy. Like, Morgan is.
Yeah. Welcome back from Cat Emergency.
Yes, I hope everything's all right.
Basket, clothes right out of the dryer. Kitty cat thinks it's the most wonderful place in the world, and it is until she gets tied up and can't move.
All right. Well, welcome back, and we're gonna let Frank go, because I think we're almost out of time here, and
we're almost out of time. Yeah,
I
appreciate it so much, guys. Thank you for being on my wavelength and letting me kind of stand on my soapbox.
Like I said, you have a standing appointment at the beginning of each arc. We want to keep talking about this book, and we want to keep supporting it. That's part of why we do this. Part of why we do this is to talk and to engage and to learn, but also to support. And we want people to go out and read this book.
It means the world to me, because again, I'm a loquacious fellow, but like, there's so much to talk about beyond just like, oh, if you saw the book in the store and didn't really give it a shot, or just read the solicit. I'm hoping, like, if any of this stuff is interesting to you, even at all, like, it will lead you to go pick up a copy.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff out there these days, and I've never been able to say that about comics. Like, in the last several decades, there's a lot of good stuff.
No,
and I see our job as shining some light on some of the stuff that people might not see.
No, so again, it is an embarrassment of riches, not Richards. An embarrassment of riches, and it's so hard as a creator because, like, again, retailers have limited shelf space. You're in and out a week. Like, there's so many good books now. It is. I don't begrudge anyone for how easy it is to get lost in the shuffle. And again, people have limited budgets, not going and spending $500 at the comic store every week, even though you could. And again, any chance I get to kind of like make the case for our story, I'm happy to do so. But thank you guys so much. I greatly appreciate it. And as I said, truly, like, your discussion of the book when it came out was really meaningful to me. I'm like, these people get it. And I'm glad to hear people asking the right questions, talking about the right things, because I don't know, it's very easy to just not talk about anything, I guess. Who can say?
Yeah. All right, Frank. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great holiday.
Thank you very, very much.
Such a great time, and thank you for having me. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Happy holidays.
All right, folks. As the holidays are coming, as we mentioned, we will
And
be
they'll
here.
be happy, damn it.
We will be happy. Next week, we're going to be here and we're going to have our year-end wrap-up. We have a couple of guests. We're going to get your top books of the year ready. Mike and I have a lot of prep to do. I will be in touch over the next few days so we can talk about setting it up. I want to get as much ahead of time as possible. It's going to be a great show. It's going to be our last one of the year, and I'm really excited about it. And we have all of January already booked pretty much. So we're going to hit 2026 running. We're going to talk to some really great people. And I'm going to spend some time maybe schooling around. Maybe we can improve our little experience for you. And that's about it. So thanks for being here, guys.
All right. We're looking forward to messing with your minds for our year-end wrap-up next week. Thanks for being here, folks.
All right, everybody. Remember, read more comics. They're good for you.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?